Hey, Todd here, in the studio, which is kind of a disaster right now. Just finishing up a couple Nike products. I got all the product over there. And then I'm starting on a Doc Martin 2-day location shoot tomorrow. And so I've got to get that prepped and ready. But just finished this Nike Olympic apparel shoot where we were shooting what we call laydowns, where you just shoot straight down on the product. And I thought I would show you guys how I light that, the gear I use for that, and everything that goes into it. And usually when I'm shooting the product, I use the 5D S, this 50 megapixel guy with my 50 millimeter on there. That's what I use with that. So we're gonna get that set up, but first I gotta do a little bit of cleanup in the studio to get ready to show you how I light that stuff. So I'm gonna take a break, do that now. I've got all the basic elements now, what I normally use here. It's really good to have a good commercial steamer. To steam the product is great. If you have a studio camera stand, a Super Salon, that's great too. It's really nice to have, to be able to raise up and down easily. And I've got an extended arm on here so I can get out over the product really easily. And it's good to have, you can use white seamless, but I use Formica. I got a big sheet of Formica down here that I work off of. Formica is great because it doesn't wrinkle like paper does, and you can just Windex it and it comes clean right away. Easy to kneel on, all that kind of stuff is great. And then I've got my 10-foot ladder over there, which is really good when you need to look down the camera. Try to center up the camera first so you don't have to use a ladder, but the ladder is great to have. And then I'm using my Pro Big, the Foto Pro Big light, which we'll talk about setting up here in a second. So that's the basic elements. Oh, and I use the 5D Mark, whatever this guy is, the 5DS, the 50 megapixel. I always forget what that thing is, but it's the 50 megapixel Canon, which is super sharp and really good dynamic range on this camera. And the raw files are really great. So for retouching, when they knock things out, that kind of thing, it's a great file for this usage. And typically use my R5. Whenever I'm shooting people in the studio, I'm using my R5, but just product alone, the 5DS is great, the 50 megapixels. So I love that. And yeah, so now we're gonna talk about how I set up the light to make it a nice, even across what I'm shooting so that it's a nice, even light. So we're gonna use the Pro Big right there. And I'm going to talk about how I set that up and how we meter to get everything nice and even with nice even metering across the board so you get a nice look. And then we'll talk about adding an additional light to create some more shadow, the stronger shadow, that kind of thing as well. But let's set up the Pro Big. A couple other items I forgot to mention that are nice to have: color meter, and you definitely need a light meter for this to get everything really accurate on your exposure and everything. And then this is nice to get color accurate as well, using both of these to get your color accurate so the product looks like it's the right color when you're shooting that. So let's get back to setting up the light over here. One other thing I forgot to say before you start setting up your light is you need to know how many products you're shooting, whether it's 1 or 10, or 4, 6, whatever it is. You need to know that distance first to know where you're going to put your light and the direction of the drop shadow you want to go. Sometimes they'll use your drop shadow, sometimes they'll create their own. It just kind of, that all depends. But for today, we're just going to do one shirt so the light can be fairly close in. But again, you need to have that shirt down to know your area, which will be 4x4 for something like this today. And then we need to get the camera level and kind of lined up before I do the lighting as well. So we're going to get the camera level and ready to go first. And I've got it tethered here too, so we're going to be tethered to the computer. And crank this back a little bit. Make sure everything's nice and tight so nothing moves while you're shooting. Back it up a little bit, and then I can't find my level. I got to find my level. I just have this small little camera level that'll go on the hot shoe that I use to level everything out. Get it dialed in. And that looks pretty dang good right there. So that's good. Now we'll get the t-shirt. I got to do a little steaming on that, and then we'll put that out here. So we're just going to lay the shirt out here, get it kind of roughed in. The style, another good thing is to have a really good stylist that does this, which I do have a really good stylist that styles the clothes out here, the wrinkles and stuff for me. I've done it a lot myself in the past, but it is really nice to have a great stylist. So it just depends on, what you do wrinkle-wise, how, much you want it, how much wrinkles you want it, and how the client really wants it, if they want it kind of just like it looks like it's just thrown down, or, is it totally smooth to see what it looks like, and so we shoot a lot of stuff for Nike EYBL, the basketball league, which is way more thrown down kind of look versus some of the other products like the Olympic stuff we just shot, which was very clean, less wrinkles, a little more simple, not so just kind of randomly thrown down. So it all depends on what the client's looking for, but this lighting will work in any situation for that. We're just going to get this light to look even all the way across right now, but we're going to come from a little bit of an angle just so the drop shadow comes out on this side of the product. And we're going to take the meter now, which we've got right here, and we're going to meter the like a foot outside of the product all the way around on all four corners to get the light to be even. So that's where a meter is going to come in really handy, is we're going to pop the strobe off and get them to equal out on all four corners. The main top corner up here where the light is back behind me, this is where you got to watch the most because it's going to be the hottest to start with. So we're going to work on lighting that now, where we're going to take that back box, big 5-foot Pro Big, and we're going to tip it up like this so it's almost pointed to the ceiling. So we're going to let the light fall across evenly. So you got to tip it up so this corner is not hot. So you're just tipping that light up, which we'll do right now and do a couple tests and get this to be nice and even lighting. Knee pads are also a good thing when you're doing this to protect your knees, because you have to be on your knees quite a bit to work around the product. I've got the light tipped up now where I think it's going to be good. So I'm going to do some testing now with the meter and make sure we're good on all four corners, and then do adjustments, tipping down, moving the light in or out to get those to all match. So that's what I'm going to do now. So far, this side lines up perfect, 5, 6.5, 5, 6.5. Now the main test is going to be up at this corner. If I've got the light tipped up high enough that this up here is not too hot. So that's a little down, so that's a good start. So it's like a third of a stop under. So we're going to fix that. And that's 5, 6.5 too. So we're just going to tip the light down and maybe turn it this way just a little bit. So we'll do that now. And it doesn't take much of a tip down to get it to Start getting bright up there. Yeah, there we go, right there. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Yep. Let's move this around. Yep, that's good. Check this up here again. Yeah, we are good to go. So basically 5, 6 and 2/3 all the way around now. So we've got a good base to start with to see our first shot coming in and see how we like it. All right, so let's get a look at our first shot. And that looks really good for our first shot. At 5, 6 and 1/3. Looks pretty good. Now we're going to throw in the color chart over the top of this apparel and do a quick click balance to make sure our lighting looks good. Put that in there, and we'll just do a quick little click balance here. Check it around. Color looks really good, so we're going to go with that. It may be a touch hot, so we're just going to stop down a little bit and fire off another one. Yeah, that looks better. But it's nice even, and we get a nice little drop shadow working around everywhere, which looks really good. And again, like I said, a lot of times they're going to create their own drop shadow, but I like to give them a nice clean drop shadow to work with. So that looks really good. Another thing you could do to make that drop shadow a little bit longer is you could take your main source and lower it down lower, and it would create a longer drop shadow. Still with that tipped up though, so it still stays even, but you would create a longer drop shadow. So again, that's just preference of the client if they're going to use the drop shadow, whether you're shooting on a different background. I mean, you could be shooting on wood or whatever you want the product, their apparel to be on, or what have you. This is kind of where I normally start at, and then we work from there. And you could also bring in another light, a harder source that could rake across the garment as well to create a different kind of shadow as well. Again, it's client preference on that type of thing. I've done that in the past, and it works really good if you want to get a little more of a dramatic feel, but still kind of keep an even light over the whole thing. And again, you know, it just determines, the client determines, you know, how much of what's important with the product. Do you need to see the whole thing? Can it be a little more moody, a little more contrasty? That kind of thing will determine how you set up your light or your second light to create that raking across. This is just the base setup. And I think we're going to try and use a large umbrella now to see if we can create the same look. I have the silk in front of this, makes it a little bit softer light, which I kind of prefer to start with. But let's try a large umbrella, just in case you don't have access to a Pro Big like this. They're pretty dang expensive. So, and I never collapse mine, because the more you collapse it and put it back together, the more it just wear and tear on the thing, so I leave it up all the time. But anyway, let's switch and go to the large umbrella, because that shot looks great. I would run with that. Exposure looks good. And again, if you were shooting like 7 or 8 products in there, you'd stack them up, move the light back further, that type of thing. But let's get onto the big umbrella. Now I have the just the Westcott, their 6-foot umbrella, silver inside. So we'll fix the, check the exposure on this, and I've got the light lower now, so it should create a longer drop shadow. But first we need to make sure our corners, all 4 corners, are the same again, so we have that nice even light across. So I'm going to do that right now. So far it's a little brighter down here on the bottom than it is on the top, so I may need to tip that down just a bit. 5, 6, 1/3. 5, 6 and 1/3. 5, 6 1/3. And 5, 6 2/3. So it's a little hot down there, but that's okay. I think we can live with that. I can back the light up just a tiny bit, and I think that would even us out perfectly. Just a little movement there. And now let's take another shot and see what we come up with. I would also recolor check here as well, just because anytime you change your modifier, the color temperature is going to be different. So I would recheck that as well. But let's see how this one looks. And I like when I'm working out there in the studio like this and I'm connected to, eyes watering, connected to CaptureOne, I put my mouse up in the little, put it up here, right in the trigger spot, and then I have another mouse, I have another old mouse that I use that I can step on and stuff, and I use this to trigger the camera like that. So that way I can be out here, I don't have to be at the computer, I can just trigger from here, I don't have to get up in the ladder, fire the camera from there or from the computer. So a little simple little extra mouse does the trick. And looking at our shot coming in, I can definitely see the colors different. So that's going to check that real quick. Drop this out there, drop the color checker out there and get a look at that. So we got that done. And the exposure is a little bit under where we were. So we can see the color checker back out there, and it's about maybe a half stop under. Recheck that. Whoops, I got to go back anyway to get my color right. There we go. And maybe a little over. Bring it down just a touch. And that's pretty close. So now we'll go back to where we were on our last one, and you can see that with the umbrella being lower, and get rid of this, the umbrella being lower, this looks a little warmer too, but we could fix that. But you could see this one here, the original, softer light, softer shadow, shorter shadow, and this one, the light's lower, so it's more contrasty, longer shadow, gives you a little different feel. So raising and lowering the light will give you that. And it's a little bit, maybe a little under here, but that, I mean, that's fine for what would be working. It looks really good. So you could use the umbrella, which is a much cheaper alternative than the Pro Big. You could use the umbrella, works fine. And to get it softer, you just have to raise it up higher, and it would get you back to that softer light that we started with. So now let's take a look at a few shots I've done in the past for Nike on this laydown using this lighting technique. So that was just a quick look at how I use the big light source back there to light the products when I'm shooting the laydowns. And on the last two, you could see I used a little more of a directional light source with a second source, still using the big in the back to add a nice even light across the top, and then I vignetted it a little bit, make it a little more dynamic, dramatic anyway. So that's some of the stuff I do using this technique, and hope you liked it. I appreciate you watching, and I've got a phone call now, so I've got to go, and until next time, I'm out.